Yes, that was Dr. Ignacio Castuera, and you can find a lot more about his institute on the internet by Googling. For those of you who are tweeting, we're tweeting at People's Climate, and this is going to be through tomorrow, and I'm also inviting all of you to join World Can't Wait's contingent. Stop the Crimes of Our Planet tomorrow, 77th Street and Central Park West. We have 2 more speakers, and then we're going to break into discussion. Our second speaker is Erica Violet Lee, and you can find her on Twitter at Erica Violet Lee. With Idle No More, and somebody who works very hard on the education of people from the First Nations. And she's here for the weekend. She spoke last night, and I know you'll be marching tomorrow from Saskatchewan. So really want to welcome her.
Or does everyone have to turn around? Because
That would be. Want to jump into this? It all seems to be on. We've got power.
I think I might just ask you to turn around.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. That's easy. We've got swivels. Yeah.
Alright, so I'm super nerding out right now because I didn't realize that Ignacio was interested in philosophy. I'm a philosophy major, and it's like so rare to meet other people of color in philosophy, so I love Alfred North Whitehead too, so I kind of wanted to respond a little bit to his comments to start. I think I really like the idea of how we have lost our sense, or even like lost the right to claim the sense of awe. I think that discovery, the concept of discovery, is something that's really been denied to Indigenous people for such a long time now. There's a really good recent example of that is the Franklin ship in Canada. So the Franklin ship is this old ship that was sent out to explore Canada, to chart Canadian waters, and the ship was lost. So it was a big loss for Great Britain, Canada being a colony of Great Britain. It was a big part of Canadian identity and of Great Britain identity, I guess, by default, is exploring, right? Exploring this vast wilderness of Canada. And so what happened to the ship is it was lost. And there were Inuit people who knew about the location of this ship. And so this was lost in like the late 1800s. And the Inuit people knew, they know the land, they knew the waters, they knew the routes, they knew where the ship was. And they mentioned it over and over to the Canadian government, who was searching for this ship so hard. And the Canadian government never bothered to look. Where the Inuit people had told them repeatedly, the ship's over here. And so in Canada right now, there's this massive nationalistic, like, hurrah, we found the ship. And, you know, it's just this way that discovery, the concept of discovery has been limited to a certain group of privileged people, right? And so we have such a negative idea of, like, discovering other human beings now because of the effects of colonization. But it can be such a positive thing, too, if we do it right. There's also something I think you'll all find interesting. If you search Columbusing on Google or whatever, there's lots of funny things reflecting on this idea. Like, so Columbusing is going over and claiming you discovered something when everyone else knew about it anyway. So it's like me walking here and look, oh, I discovered New York City. I discovered this. Columbusing. So, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Erica Violet Lee. I'm from Saskatchewan, and I spoke last night as well. But I guess I want to keep this a little bit more informal because I'm looking forward to discussion. So this is where I'm from. This is Saskatoon. Kitiskatchewanasipi is the Cree name. And And this is the very first Idle No More gathering. This is the small community center in Saskatoon, a couple blocks from my house, and we had this gathering in November of 2012, and it was the same small group of activists that, you know, is at every single meeting, regardless of what the topic is, and it was such a small room of people. There was only about 100 people, I think, and I had a chance to speak there. This is Cody Dill doing a slam poem right now. And from that, we got to this. This is in Ottawa in January 2013, so this is a couple months after that initial rally in Saskatoon. Protests had spread from Saskatoon to Saskatchewan. The very next day after that rally, we were organizing rallies in Saskatchewan. Started a Facebook page up, which immediately rose to 100,000 likes pretty quickly. And all over the world, there were Idle No More protests all over the world. So this is Neil Stonechild. I'll take you back for a second here. Neil Stonechild was a Cree, I'm Cree as well, a Cree boy who grew up in Saskatoon. And in 1990, a couple of months after I was born, actually, his body was found on the outskirts of Saskatoon in the winter. And he was frozen to death. This was a practice, they found out that this was something the cops had done to him, had taken him out and dropped him off on the outskirts to walk off his intoxication, apparently, supposedly, right? And he was found with, like, no shoes. They had taken his shoes. He was wearing just a little jean jacket. And this is called a Starlight Tour, and this was something that the cops had known about and had been a common, acceptable practice. You know, not officially on paper, but something that the cops admitted they knew about to do to Aboriginal people. This is a piece of artwork from Diana Thornycroft's series, A People's History, in which she depicts critical images of Canada's history. And this is one that I remember really vividly from when I was a young girl growing up. This is the real-life version of this. Neil Stonechild's body, laying on the ground, was flashed across the television screen every day at dinner time. Because like I said, it was 1990, and so for all of my childhood, when that trial was going on, the trials and discussion of this in the media, every night at dinner time I remember seeing this image over and over again, and there was a video clip too, and like, how dehumanizing is that? Why is that acceptable that people of color, Indigenous people, women too, are dehumanized like that? And so for me growing up, I remember seeing images of Indigenous people like this, and only this. I remember seeing Indigenous people dead, or committing crimes, or missing and murdered, like many Indigenous women. This is actually Marlene Bird, and she is still alive. She was found in sort of the same way as Stonechild, but just recently, like a couple months ago. So lest you think that this happened only in the 1990s or before then, it's still going on today, and Marlene Bird was found. And she is my personal hero right now, because even though she was brutally attacked, and I've stopped discussing the nature of the attack because I think that's dehumanizing in itself in a way. You know, we hear these narratives so often, this was what was done. But I'm going to tell you, like, that she is strong and powerful, and rather than choosing to, she was homeless as well, and rather than choosing to be made into a victim, like we so often are in the media as Aboriginal women, especially in Canada, she chose to speak out and say, I have a name, I have a face, I'm not just an anonymous person. So what we're doing with Idle No More and Indigenous resistance movements, period, is restoring Canada. One of the images of the Idle No More movement was a round dance, which is a Plains Cree tradition. I wish we could do one, but this room isn't really conducive to it. It's you link hands and dance in a circle to drummers. And that was one of the biggest forms of protests during Idle No More, the height of Idle No More, and still today. I think it's a really powerful ceremony, because what you're doing is you go out onto the land or whatever, and there were actually round dances in downtown New York during the height of Idle No More last year, and reclaiming spaces. You're reclaiming, and for me, growing up in a city, so many people think of Aboriginal people only as being on reservations, only as being on reserves, but over 50% of us now live in urban centers. And so, again, with the conception of nature, we need to reclaim what we consider nature, because I grew up in a city, and this is nature too, and just because this is paved now doesn't mean that we have all of a sudden lost our responsibility to care for this land as well. It's part of the land, it's indigenous land too. Sagi Wewin is a Cree term that means love in actions. And all indigenous resistance, in whatever form it takes, I think is based on love in actions. What does that look like? It looks like women leading, women's voices in the forefront of movements. It looks like holding hands and doing round dances that scare governments so much that they put us all on watch lists. This is another example of reclaiming an urban space. This is the biggest mall in Saskatoon, which I know isn't saying much, but we had hundreds of people packed into this mall, and what a powerful display of disobedience to capitalism, to have a round dance in a mall, I thought. And they started closing their doors because they were afraid we were going to steal stuff. Something that I wanted to address a little bit, the way that Indigenous people are taken up in environmental movements, I think is a little problematic some of the times. We're viewed through an essentialist lens, as if, Indigenous people have any, like, a special connection to the earth, when in reality that special connection to the earth is based on knowledge systems that we developed. It's not an inherent biological thing. It's about knowledge systems. And so just keep that in mind, I guess, this weekend. Another thing I'm passionate about, and I sort of talked about last night, was mascots. Once again, this goes back to the idea of Indigenous people and nature, and Indigenous men as being savage warriors, one-dimensional. I don't know if you've noticed a theme. One-dimensional is the theme here. This is a photo of Brad LaRoque, who is from Kanawagi. This is a photo of the Oka crisis. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that in Canada, in Quebec. They had a the Kanawagi Mohawks had this giant piece of land that was a burial ground, and the Canadian government came in and wanted to turn it into a golf course. So that kicked off one of the biggest examples of Indigenous resistance in the past couple of decades. So it's defending land for Indigenous people takes a lot of different forms. This is more recently, just last year in Elsipogtok, which is in New Brunswick, to protest fracking, governments coming in and seismic testing on lands, fracking without permission. There was a group that set up a blockade, and it was largely led by women, once again, and they sent in massive amounts of police, and so the women sat down in front and put up feathers, and there's just so many. I want to sort of get discussion going on the idea of resistance and what tactics can we use, what tactics have you used in your own efforts to protect the earth. This is the Alberta tar sands, a province away from where I live. The tar sands is one of the biggest sources of pollution now in the world. It's going to become the single most destructive project in the world. And the government is pushing it through right now. So we need solidarity, and we need more people talking about this in the States too. Right now, this is the Tar Sands Healing Walk, and it's primarily Indigenous people who are out there, who are up north, walking and holding ceremonies and doing blockades, and these things get barely any passing mention in the media. That's some artwork. Go quicker here. Another important thing that we have to think about when we're talking about indigenous lands, when we're talking about nature, is this idea that of woman as the first environment. I got that phrase from the Native Youth Sexual Health Network, who do amazing work up in Canada. So many of the issues that are affecting indigenous people now are tied to bodies, you know, and so it's important to, when we're considering nature, also remember that there's bodies on that land, and that those bodies have been constantly displaced to get access to the land and resources. This is a Sami rally in Norway, I don't know where, Quebec. Zapatistas. When we posted this photo, we got a lot of backlash. As if, you know, I guess we can talk about this more, about resistance taking different forms. And this is some of the backlash. I'll end off with this photo. This was submitted one day when I was really overwhelmed with all the stuff, all the media and all the stuff on the Facebook page. And it sort of encapsulates, I think, solidarity across the world on these issues. So thank you very much.